camera is cutting off my head. I know I'm not that intelligent, but can't afford to lose half my head. Okay. Jai Anila Prema Dana Koruna Pracho Prema Dana Koruna Pracho Hey no Prabhu Kotagela Acharya Thakur Kahamora Saruprupa Kaha Sanatan Karasura Gunatha Pachita Pavan Kahamura Bata Juga Kaha Kaviras Eka Kale Kota Gela Goranatara Ashane Kutivo Mahata Onale Pashivo Goranga Gunera Nidhi Kota Gile Prabhu Gunera Nidhi Kota Gile Prabhu Sesabha Sangira Sange Ye Koilo Vilas Sangira Sange Yai Koilo Vilas Se Sangana Paya Kande Maruta Moja Yehanila Prema Dana Koruna Pracho La Prema Dana Koruna Pracho Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paradikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chananada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Mara Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananda
Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Shridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shaima Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan ki jai. Mathuram ki jai. Chakravarti ki jai. Manamai ki jai. Shrimati Tulsi Devi ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. So we'll read the translation to this poem by Narottama Das Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and was filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality as Srinivasa Acharya gone? Where am I Sarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where am I Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kavi Raj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottama Das simply weeps. So, Om Gana Timidanda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Prabhupada ki jai. So it's the disappearance or the commemoration of the disappearance day of the two great personalities, Srila Rupa Goswami and Gauridas Pandit. And there's a lot of information about Gauridas Pandit too. So we may or may not get to Gauridas Pandit today in the class. So Rupa Goswami's history. Oh, actually, let me just recite one verse from the Goswami Ashtaka. Nana Shastra Vichara Naikanipano Siddharma Sams Dabako Lokanam Hitakarano Chibuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo. So Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami and the six Goswamis of Vrindavan had been given the duty by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to primarily peruse all the revealed scriptures, and they were quite intelligent, expert. They were multilingual people. You know, they spoke Arabic, they spoke Parsi, they spoke, of course, Hindi and Bengali and Sanskrit, amongst other languages. So they were given the duty by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to peruse these literatures and come up with Saddharma Samstapako to establish what were the eternal religious principles. Because, as mentioned in the Mahabharata, Tarko Prashishta Shutina Vivina, which is an interesting verse, that one cannot understand basically anything, especially the absolute truth of the goal of life, by logic and reasoning, or by examining the Shrutis, the Vedic literatures. Of course, in this sense, Shruti refers to Shruti, Smriti, Puranas, etc., like that. Vivina, they are many-branched, and it's very hard to understand. Of course, if one simply reads from the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter, what is it? Vedais cha saverahame vedyo. Then Krishna says, by all the Vedas I am to be known, but very few people will accept that as the absolute truth. So the six Goswamis of Vrindavan, basically, their main duty was to actually establish the worship of Krishna, actually Sambandha Avideya Prayojana. Let's get into that a little more specifically. The three aspects of Krishna consciousness, the understanding of the tattvas and the relationships between the different tattvas. Tattvas means basically the different categories or truths, such as the external energy of the Lord, the internal energy of the Lord, time, karma, living entities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all those factors, and the relationship, that sambandha, the relationship between all these different factors. So that's the first aspect that they were teaching. Of course, generally it's understood that Sanatana Goswami is the acharya of that aspect of devotional service. And the deity, the presiding deity, is Madan Mohan Vigraha. Actually, interesting, Madan Mohan means the attractor of Cupid, who is Krishna. And actually, Madan Mohan Mohini is the attractor of Cupid. That's even better than Krishna. Anyway, that's the Sambandha knowledge, Sambandha Gyan, that was taught by Sanatana Goswami. Actually, all the Goswamis taught this. And Sanatana Goswami specifically elaborated on the Sambandha Gyan in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. It's mentioned that the Brihad Bhagavatamrita was the foundational literature that is basically establishing the tattvas that all the Goswamis of Vrindavan followed after that point. So it's very important literature. I mean, it's in the form of a story, actually two stories. A story of Gopal Kumar and then Narada Muni looking for the best devotee of the Lord. And it's very easy to digest, but the truths are very deep in this literature. So then, anyway, after Sambandha, there's Abhideya. Abhideya means basically how to put into action what you've learned from the Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha, the relationship between the tattvas, and basically what do you do about it? Now that we know that our soul is eternal, now that we know that we're changing bodies, now that we know about the law of karma, now that we know about Krishna, now that we know about the spiritual world, so what are you going to do about it? Well, basically, if you're intelligent, you try to figure out how to get the heck out of the material world and engage in Krishna's service. And Rupa Goswami is the acharya of this Abhideya, teaches us this. And that's why Prabhupada commented several times that Rupa Goswami's literature, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Prabhupada wrote about and commented on and translated as the Nectar of Devotion, is our law book. It's really a guidebook on how to be Krishna conscious, what to expect, what emotions, what are bogus emotions, what are conflicting emotions, and ultimately, the perfection of Krishna consciousness. So Rupa Goswami is considered to be the acharya of this Abhideya Gyan. And of course, his deity, Radha Govinda, is understood to be the presiding deity of this Abhideya Gyan. And actually, it's interesting how the deities are named. That indicates their particular dominance over that particular aspect of Krishna consciousness. Govinda basically means to please the senses. Obviously engage in the senses. You have the go there, which means the senses. Of course, go also means cows. But in this particular context, Govinda refers to the pleaser of the senses, or engaging the go in Krishna's service. So Rupa Goswami gives us instructions how to do that. And then finally, of course, you have the Prayojana Gyan. Prayojana means the ultimate goal, and Raghunath Das Goswami is the acharya of Prayojana, and the deity is Radha Gopinath. Now, Radha Gopinath is Madhav Pandit's deity. It's interesting. Not Raghunath Das Goswami's deity, but Raghunath Das Goswami performed the majority of his devotional service in Braj at Radha Kund, which is definitely Prayojana, the ultimate goal. So anyways, that's a brief overview of all the Goswamis, or at least the three primary teachers of the three primary aspects of devotional service. So here's little information about the history of Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami's parents had one daughter and 5 sons, and of those sons, three of them were known as pure devotees, Rupa, Sanatan, and Anupama or Balaba. And they actually started to work under the Nawab Hussain Shah, who was the Mughal, not emperor, but in charge of that particular area of Bengal at that time. So one may ask, why do they work under the Nawab Hussain Shah, and why did the Nawab Hussain Shah want them to work under him? Well, let's answer the second question first. They were asked to work under the Nawab Hussain Shah because they were known as honest people, Brahminical people. And it's interesting that the Nawab Hussain Shah didn't hire any of his own people because he couldn't trust them. So if someone is known as a pure devotee, as we hear many times, Yasyasti Bhakti Bhagavacha Kinchana Savargunas Tatra Samasute Sura, then all the good qualities are manifest just by someone being a pure devotee. And of course, Harabha Bhakta Shikato Mahat Guna Mano Retainasati Davato Bihi, that one who is not a devotee of Krishna, their qualities are simply on the mental platform. Sometimes they exhibit ostensibly good qualities, and they go on for a long time, and sometimes really bad qualities, but nothing stable. With a devotee, because a devotee is nishta, he's steady, stable. You could actually set your clock or your watch by a devotee. So anyway, they were hired, and so the question is, why do they work like that? I mean, they're Brahmins. If a Brahmin accepts employment, it's considered that the Brahmin has lost his caste. Why is that? Because he can no longer speak the truth. Because one of the aspects of being a Brahmin is satya, it's telling the truth. But when you're getting money from someone, then you really have to adjust your whole lifestyle and adjust what you say because you don't want to lose your job. Of course, Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami weren't concerned about the money from their job, but they were concerned about what the Nawab Hussain Shah would do if they didn't perform their services properly. In fact, the Nawab Hussain Shah threatened to kill all their villages, all the villagers, if Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami and Anupama didn't do their service. So that, under duress, they agreed to serve the Nawab Hussain Shah. So anyway, so they didn't voluntarily do it. And they did associate a lot with the Muslims when they did it. And Rupa Goswami was known as a Dabir Kash, which means private secretary to the Nawab Hussain Shah, and Shakara Malik Sanatana Goswami was known as the revenue officer. And they were trusted. And they had great wealth. So even while Rupa Goswami was working under the Nawab Hussain Shah, he had actually written several books on the Vedic philosophy. So later on, it's described here, they resigned themselves to their fate, and they settled in a village named Ramakeli. And in that village named Ramakeli, they constructed a replica of Vrindavan, Gupta Vrindavan. Like many devotees do at many temples, they actually have laid out Govardhan or parts of Vrindavan. Like in Hungary, Shivaram Maharaj has done that, and in New Govardhan in Australia, they've actually done that too. Originally, that was my intention here. We have a hill in the back of the property, and I call that hill Govardhan Hill. But very few people go back there now because they're afraid of the creatures there. The raccoons and the squirrels that may attack them. No, snakes. It's actually, but our plan here is actually to make trails through the property and have different replicas of different pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, so people can walk these trails and see explanations about those things. I was talking to Veda yesterday about this. So it's a very important project because we have 16 acres here and 1,500 feet of river frontage, River Jamuna, Govardhan Hill. Everything can be here on the property, and then devotees could spend an hour just walking around. The property is quite large. So that's our idea. So they constructed this Gupta Vrindavan in Ramakeli. And they studied Sanskrit under Sarvananda Vijaya Vachaspati, who was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's brother. So they were connected in that way. So in the year 1514, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to go to Vrindavan. Now, at this particular juncture, when he decided to go to Vrindavan, he was surrounded by literally thousands of people. It was like one of these big Brajamando parikramas you sometimes see on the internet. I know, you've been on that. And so, I mean, when they go, I mean, I've been at Govardhan when all the buses show up, and I just like go hide in my house. There's so many people there. It's incredible. Anyway, so, but Lord Chaitanya was surrounded by all these devotees, and they also had, Lord Chaitanya also was accompanied by Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, who were all going to Vrindavan. So they met Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami and Davrika Shakar Malik and Anupama. And it's described that Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, anyway, I'm referring to them in terms of their ultimate names. They approached Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with straw in their teeth. And they said, here's a quote, actually I want to read this quote. "You are the most merciful Savior of the fallen souls. All glories to your Supreme Personality." That's like Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gorase Namaha. And they said, we belong, this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavad, some of the quotes we have here. "We belong to the lowest class of men," they continued, "and our associates in employment are the lowest type. Therefore, we feel it's strange to introduce ourselves to you." Oh. That's all right. Let me just turn that on. So we get maybe, all right, I'm not going to break class to do this, but at least we're recording it right now. Anyway, actually I can put myself on here. Give me 1 second. It's always good to have a backup. Now on Facebook. All right. 1 second. 1 secondito. What's that? Yeah, because there's a delay on Facebook. That's why it's not actually broadcasting. There's like a 2-minute delay. Facebook does. All right, here we go. All right. Anyway, we'll put it up later. Oh, this is a mistake. Hold on a second. What's that? Yeah, but it wasn't going to go in that direction. So it's. All right. Sorry for the glitch. All right, we're on again. It's life. Okay. So, sorry for the brief break here. And so at that particular point, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu changed their names. He gave them instant initiation. He said, your names now are Shri Rupa and Shri Sanatan, and also Anupama or Balaba. Anyway, so then they actually, first Lord Chaitanya said, I had no business in Ramakeli. My only business is to actually see you. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu placed his hands on their heads and blessed them. And at this particular point, Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami advised Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to not continue to Vrindavan. He said, it's basically like this big circus you're going in. Vrindavan should be appreciated in a very, let's say, peaceful mood. So, then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on their advice, taking their advice, did not proceed to Vrindavan. So shortly after that, Rupa Goswami and Vallabha, who had been named Nupama by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, renounced the world. And they began to live as traveling mendicants, and as Prabhupada describes, that Rupa Goswami gave 50% to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, 25% of his income, which was actually boatloads of gold coins, not a small amount, and 25% for personal emergencies. And of course, that 25% that was meant for personal emergencies was used by Sanatana Goswami later on to escape, bribe the prison warden, and escape from prison. Eventually, they traveled to Prayag, and in Prayag they met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught them all the truths about Krishna consciousness, the tattvas and the transcendental relationships. Actually, it was there that they composed the poem, Namo Mahavijnaya. Krishna Prem. What?
It's still live in the Zoom class. There's still devotees on it.
All right.
See them on your Facebook page.
Well, I don't see how that's possible. But anyway, life is life. Maybe Krishna is using his own computer. So anyway, so there they go. Krishna's very merciful. So there, I don't understand these things. These are beyond the experiencing jurisdiction of the conditioned souls. So anyway, so they composed that song there, and then there's a lot of information here which we're not going to read or make reference to concerning Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami at this particular juncture. They accompanied Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as far as Benares, and then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told them to go to Vrindavan and meet him later on in Jagannath Puri. And on the way to Vrindavan, Anupama left the world, and while traveling to Puri after Rupa Goswami left Vrindavan, Rupa Goswami first conceived of dramatic playwriting as a viable means to convey the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And while he was thinking about this, he was passing through a village named Satyabhama Pura. And in this village, the village was named after Satyabhama, he had a dream, and a beautiful woman appeared to him and asked him to write a play about her. And then he realized it was Satyabhama. And actually, she asked him to write a separate play about her, because originally he was thinking, let me write a play about the pastimes in Vrindavan and the pastimes in Dwarka. Just combine them all in one play. But she said, there had to be two separate plays. I need one play about me. And the Lita Madhava is primarily about Satyabhama, although you have other personalities like Rukmini there and others, but the interaction between Satyabhama and Krishna is the primary topic of the Lita Madhava. And Satyabhama, of course, is the direct expansion of Srimati Radharani, and in the same mood as Srimati Radharani. And we'll be seeing portions of that play by the mercy of Champaka on Janmashtami, right? All right, mercy of Champaka, of Rupa Goswami. So, actually, Rupa Goswami did not complete these works, the Lita Madhava and the Vidagdha Madhava, Lita Madhava referring to the pastimes primarily in Dwarka, although it begins with Vrindavan. And then Vidagdha Madhava, the pastimes in Vrindavan. He didn't complete them until later, although some of the rough drafts of these works were read by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, and they were actually quite impressed. There's a whole discussion between Rupa Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Swarup Damodar Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about this. So it's described that these two are regarded by Gaudiya Vaishnavas, these two works, as the most important dramatic literatures in the Sanskrit language. But Rupa Goswami, being extremely humble, did not go into the Jagannath Puri temple. He actually remained outside along with Haridas Thakur, which Sanatana Goswami did the same thing. And he just looked at the flag because he considered himself fallen, having taken association and taken up, he considered that he had taken up many of the habits of the Muslims. And that was the tradition in those days. It's interesting. So we shouldn't try to push our way into the temple. When Krishna wants, we can go in the temple. And Prabhupada said that unless they let the Western devotees into the temple, Lord Jagannath will come out and join us. And in fact, he has. And all over the world. Srila Prabhupada's favorite festival was the Rath Yatra festival, which he established in San Francisco. Anyway, so Rupa Goswami stayed with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 10 months and got further instruction from him. Later on, he went to Bengal just to settle everything with his family. It showed he was very responsible. In other words, leaving the proper money with his family, divided the wealth up properly, and he gave a lot of money to the Brahminical community and temples in Bengal. So, then, when he arrived in Braj, this was the second time, because first he went to Braj, then he went to Puri. When he arrived back in Braj, he established the deity of Vrindadevi, and it's described here. Of course, Vrindadevi is known to be one of the primary characters in the Lalita Madhava. Actually, Nava Vrinda. That means an expansion of Vrinda that's in Nava Vrindavan, which is New Vrindavan, not the one in Pennsylvania, not the one in West Virginia, but it's outside of Dwarka. It's a replica of Vrindavan that was constructed by Vishwakarma to help Krishna allay some of his feelings of intense separation. That's mentioned in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So we established the deity of Vrindadevi, and Vrindadevi originally was on the same site as the temple that Rupa Goswami established, the Govinda Dev temple. And today this deity is found in a temple known as the Madan Mohan temple, but not the one in Vrindavan. It's the one in Kamyavan. If anybody's been to Kamyavan, a beautiful place, which is in western Braj. So, Rupa Goswami, at one particular juncture in Vrindavan, was actually lamenting his inability to carry out Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions, and especially about establishing a temple. And while he was meditating on like that and lamenting on the banks of the Yamuna River, a young boy approached him. And the young boy said, "Why are you so depressed?" And Rupa Goswami said that I've gotten this mission to establish Vrindavan as a place of pilgrimages, headquarters for the Hare Krishna movement, and building temples and establish a scholastic and literary community, and I don't know how I'm going to do this. And after hearing this, the young boy said, "Follow me." And he led Rupa Goswami to a small hill. And he said, inside, there's the deity of Govinda Dev, which was established almost 5,000 years ago by Brajanava, who was Krishna's great-grandson. The story is Brajanava came with some of Krishna's wives that were still there, and he came to Braj, and he was the one who actually installed most of the original deities in Braj. And there's one description that he had a kirtan one time, and Krishna and the gopis and all the cowherd boys, they came out of the ground. They were dancing in the Govardhan area. They were dancing, and after the kirtan, and Uddhava too, and after the kirtan, they'd all disappeared. So anyway, so later, after this deity was installed by Brajanava, there was an invasion of the Muslims, which was far after the deity was installed, far later. And the villagers had buried the deity in the hill to prevent his destruction, and the deity was lost, basically. But the boy described to Rupa Goswami that every day a large cow comes to the place and showers her milk upon where the deity is. And in this way, Govinda Dev is having his daily meal. Then the young boy just disappeared into thin air. Wow, that young boy, of course, is Krishna. And Rupa Goswami came to that same spot, and he saw there was a cow there, and the cow was dripping her milk right into the hole in the ground. And Rupa Goswami got very excited, called for all the villagers, and they dug up and they discovered the deity of Govinda Dev. Pretty amazing. And under the patronage of the famous Emperor Akbar, this deity, a temple for this deity was later on established. Of course, Rupa Goswami did not see the completion of this temple. It was completed after he left this world, and then also, after the temple was completed, this horrible person, Aurangzeb, who was considered an incarnation of Kamsa, destroyed the temple because the temple was so high that the ghee lamps on the top of the temple could be seen from Agra, which is quite far away. And he got so upset that something was so bright in Vrindavan, he sent his men to destroy the temple, and they were tearing the top stories down. And then all of a sudden there was rumbling and, whatever it is, a horrible sound. Not horrible, it was Krishna, but a nice sound. But they thought it was a horrible sound. The ground was shaking, and all his men ran away, and therefore half the temple is there. At least the top stories were taken down. So later on, actually at the same time, these deities were moved to Jaipur for protection, where he is presently being worshipped along with Srimati Radharani. And that's the famous Radha Govinda temple, which is right in the palace area in Jaipur. And every morning, all the pious people of the city, they assemble near the temple, and they are chanting, Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. I mean, it's quite a wonderful sight. Has anyone here been there? Just a few of us, two of us. Oh, Krishna Priya is born there. But they're chanting Govinda, Govinda, and the whole town, they're circumambulating. It's quite a sight. I mean, if devotees get an opportunity, they should go to Jaipur. I've been there several times because that's where Radha Golokananda came from. The story of Radha Golokananda is very interesting. I'll just tell it real quickly. Is that we had all these different pictures of deities from all over the world, and we went to the sculptor. There's a whole road of sculpture of deity. It's a deity area. There's like hundreds, if not thousands, of sculptures of deities there. And of course, they have deities of everything. There's Indira Gandhi deities. There's Satya Sai Baba deities. And they'll make a deity of you if you want. But anyway, so it's not that I ordered a deity off of the shelf. I went to the, I guess called, mystery would be more or less like a plumber or something. But whoever does the sculpting, I went to them and the most famous one, and I said, this is what we want. We want Krishna to look like this. We want Radharani to look like this. And it took several years to get the deities made because they start with one big marble piece and gradually chip away by hand. And I was watching them do it. It was quite amazing. And then finally, I arranged for the shipping from India, and then I personally walked the deities through the customs in New York. This is nice. And then I drove them down in my car, and I kept them in my cabin in the woods for about a year or two, isn't it? They were in my cabin in the woods. So, I mean, it's quite, anyway. Yeah, my connection with the deities goes back a long time. Anyway, so that's Jaipur. So anyway, so Radha Govinda in Jaipur, that's why I spent a lot of time in Jaipur. And so the as far as the Vidagdha Madhava and Lita Madhava are concerned, his two primary works, it's described that the inner guidelines and esoteric rasas for these dramas were given to Rupa Goswami by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. In other words, this is Lord Chaitanya's dictation, basically, to Srila Rupa Goswami, and Lord Chaitanya gave it to him. Wow, the house of, actually they were previously divulged at the house of Chandrasekhara Acharya, not in front of Rupa Goswami, but they were previously given to the devotees there. And actually, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enacted some of these same dramatic performances for the pleasure of his devotees in those houses. Wow. So I describe, I guess we should describe what the Vidagdamadava describes the intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. The primary theme of the play centers around a fundamental concern that Radharani's husband might spirit her away from Shri Krishna, and thus creating a serious obstacle to their union. In addition, forgive me, Chandravali tries to compete with Radharani for Krishna's affection. The drama enables one to experience the inner turbulence of an otherwise blissful conjugal rus. It nonetheless assures its audience of the ultimate victory that is quite inevitable in spiritual relationships. Jai, Radha and Krishna. So it has 7 acts to it. Lita Madhava is a description of Krishna's pastimes in Dwarka. Maybe we'll speak about that tonight in our class online. And it was finished in 1546. It starts out with the killing of Shankachuta. The third part deals with Srimati Radharani going crazy in separation. The fourth with Radharani's proceeding towards Krishna, leaving this world and getting taken by the sun god. Anyway, I don't have time to tell the whole thing. The fifth with the achievement, too bad, of Chandravali. The sixth with the achievement of Lalita. The seventh with the meeting in Nava Vrindavan, which we mentioned before. And amazing pastimes in Nava Vrindavan. At one point, they were actually in a cave and looking at the pictures of their previous pastimes. Are you going to show this in the play?
Not on the We're only going up through Act 4.
Okay. That's one of my favorite parts. They're looking at the pictures of their past, just like a wedding couple would look at their pictures, a wedding album or something like that. So they're looking at the pictures of all their pastimes in Vrindavan that are carved on the wall of the cave. And then one time, there's the pastime of Krishna stealing the gopis' clothes, and there's a depiction of the gopis without any clothes on. And Krishna points out the picture of Radharani in that way. He says, "Who's that girl?" And Radharani gets very upset. "You know who that is." Radharani, who is Satyabhama? Sorry about that. Radharani and Satyabhama speaking about them being the same person because the same mood. And then, anyway, finally there's a happy ending in which Rukmini, who is Chandravali, accepts Satyabhama as her co-wife. And we're not going to tell the whole story right now. Lord Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Srila Rupa Goswami compiled 2 important dramas named Vidagdamadava and Lalita Madhava, from which one can understand all the mellows derived from the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Wow. And there's another literature composed by Srila Rupa Goswami which takes up from where the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu leaves off. It's called the Ujjvala Nilamani. And it's quite elaborate. Rupa Goswami, of course, is the incarnation of Rupa Manjari. A Manjari Gopi is a small, it's not small, but a prepubescent girl who assists Radha and Krishna in their pastimes. Just one final story here, because all we have time for. One time, Rupa Goswami was performing his bhajan in a place known as Tero Kadamba. That's near Nandagram. And he had the desire to get some milk and sugar and prepare some kheer for his Govinda deity, and also to offer to Sanatana Goswami. So as he was thinking like that, a young girl came and brought him a nice quantity of milk and sugar. Here she said, "Please prepare some nice kheer and offer it to your deity." After saying this, she disappeared. Rupa Goswami did as she said. He boiled the milk and sugar into a sweet, thick, condensed drink, offered it to his deity, and gave the remnants to Sanatan. In fact, when Sanatan took the remnants of this kheer, he started to shake in ecstasy and basically roll on the ground. He was unable to control himself, and he asked Rupa Goswami, "Where'd you get the ingredients?" Rupa Goswami described to him where he got the ingredients for this kheer, and Sanatana Goswami understood that the girl who brought the ingredients was Srimati Radharani, and he chastised Rupa Goswami because Sanatana Goswami was the elder brother, so he was like the Siksha Guru of Srila Rupa Goswami. And he said, we should not take service from Radharani, we should serve Radharani. You have actually violated the primary principle that has been taught to us. Of course, this is a pastime. He did a similar thing with Raghunath Das Goswami. Sanatana Goswami chastised Raghunath Das Goswami when Raghunath Das Goswami was being shielded from the sun by Srimati Radharani and protected from the tigers by Krishna. And he forced Raghunath Das Goswami to build a bhajan kutir. Okay, on that happy note, all glory is to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Rupa Goswami ki jai. All righty.